Welcome to the Small Church Podcast, where faith, community, and ministry intersect in the unique context of smaller congregations. I'm your host, Tony Marr, and I'm thrilled to be joined by two men who are convinced they're a little bit more talented than I am.
That is right. I'm Robert Kill, one of those supposedly more talented guys, co-host and fellow small church leader. Together, we're here to explore the challenges, triumphs, and inspiring stories within the tight-knit communities that make up our smaller churches.
And I'm Bruce Montgomery, the one here to bring even more to the table than these two and offer a unique perspective to our conversation.
So whether you believe this talent hierarchy or not, you're in for a treat. If you're a pastor, a church member, or just curious about the world of leadership, you're in the right place.
Each episode, we dive into topics that matter to you, from innovative ministry ideas to navigating the unique dynamics of a smaller congregation.
So grab your cup of coffee, settle in, and let's journey together through the wonderful tapestry of small church life.
This is the Small Church Podcast.
Good morning, gentlemen.
What is up?
So, full transparency to our guests, we have been sitting here for the last hour trying to figure out Bruce's audio. And while I could see Bruce on the computer screen, could not hear him. And I know that this is becoming a recurring theme on our show is, will Bruce be with us or not? And it's not that for a lack of effort, it's just that we can't figure this stuff out. So
this is like that Will It Float segment of Jimmy Fallon.
That's
or
right.
Something.
Yeah. And so if you are listening to the Small Church Podcast and you have great technical expertise, we would love to hear from you on what we can do here to help out three technologically illiterate people to figure this out. But I am very happy to say that after an hour and many different attempts and efforts, we do have the one, the only Dr. K. Bruce Montgomery here with us on the Small Church Podcast. Bruce, how are you?
Well, I'm doing fine, and don't let him fool you. The other two people on this are very good. I'm just very stupid about the electronic things, and so I'm taxing their patience. So if anybody can help us with that, please let us know and help out the Small Church Podcast.
Bruce, you're getting ready to take off on vacation for a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can still be reached by phone, and probably we can pick it up at the resorts. We got some timeshares down in Florida we're going to, and give Carol a little bit of time off since I'm the one who's retired, and she's still working a bunch of things. I'm going to take her to some places she likes to go and let her just relax. And I'm just going to plan on getting sunburned.
Well, everybody can call you Bruce except Tony, who has been blocked on your phone.
We did find out that I am blocked on Bruce's phone, and he can't accept texts from me. He can't accept phone calls from me. I can't FaceTime him. I am in his blocked list.
I've known him for 10 months. You've known him for 20 years, and I'm still connected. You are blocked.
That's correct. I've actually known him for 30 years. 30 years. And I'm wondering how long that I've been blocked in his phone.
Well, you're like a son to me, but sometimes sons have to be disciplined.
Chastened.
But I don't know what's going on. Are you blocked now?
Well, we're talking to you right now, so I'm thinking that maybe you figured out how to unblock me.
He
I'm
called
hoping
you,
so.
Didn't he?
No, I called.
Then you're unblocked.
Yeah,
I gave my phone to Carol, and she fixed it.
All right. Thank you, Carol.
So I think we're good. Yeah, Carol's left the room.
So what I'm hearing is that Carol's actually the one we need on the Small Church Podcast.
Preach it, but she costs more than I do.
Oh yeah. Our pay rates are pretty low. Hers is probably much more substantial.
So we're jumping in. We're jumping in this week into part 2 of a conversation that we started last week. Bruce was not with us for part 1 last week because Bruce was at the eye doctor's appointment. And so we're continuing our conversation on volunteers, how to build a strong volunteer team in your church community. And last week we talked a lot about recruiting volunteers. Today we're going to get into training and equipping our volunteers, and then what can we do to retain our volunteers, to not burn them out, to keep them going. And in our in our pre-recording meeting when we were trying to figure out all of Bruce's stuff, we were talking over last week's episode, and Bruce said, "Can you give me a quick summary of what you guys discussed last week when it comes to recruiting volunteers?" And Robert, you gave a great summary of that. So if you were not with us last week and you don't want to take the time to go back and listen to the previous episode, why don't you give our listeners the quick recap there?
Oh my goodness. I say so much. I don't even,
You pretty much said the way that we gave the expert opinions of the Small Church Podcast was gunpoint, bribery,
begging.
and begging.
Yeah,
is how you get volunteers.
that's true.
We're going to write a book.
Yeah, but one of the things I would say is that in continuing to support and encourage the people who are doing things, to let them know that they're appreciated, and that you're there for them if they need help. But I think encouragement and support are the two things we can do to recruit and maintain a good team.
Yours don't include a misdemeanor or a felony, Bruce. So I like your ideas a little bit better.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, I've cut that out of my requirements and things. But we've all had good volunteers. But what I've seen often in small church is that they get as worn out as a preacher. They'll do it, and they'll do it, and they'll do it, and Bill will do this, and Bill will do this, and pretty soon Bill's doing everything, and there's no time off. There's nothing there. It's like in teaching Sunday school. You sign on to teach that class for life, and so it's yours until you die. That's not a good theology. But giving people some breaks, I would think sometimes with some people we need to give them, here, take these 3 months off. And it's not that you're doing a bad job, you're doing a good job, but take some time off for your family and things so that you don't burn out. But I think that goes for almost all volunteers in the church, the ones who teach Sunday school, the ones who do all the other tasks that are there. Everybody needs to be, one, appreciated, and number two, give them some rest.
So, like, I don't want to, I mean, Bruce has forgotten more than I will ever know about some of these topics. As a small church pastor, and I'm sure there's a lot of people sitting here going, man, that would be awesome. I would love to give all of my volunteers 3 months off a year and kind of just, hey, I'd love to give you 3 weeks off to kind of just take a breath. But when, I think I said this in the last episode, I'm facing some tensions and some struggles in recruiting, shepherding, leading volunteers. And I feel like we're in a really good space. And there's churches that are a fourth, a tenth the size of us, that if everybody there doesn't serve every week, they don't exist. So right. I'm wondering how that breaks down, because in a bigger situation, even something that's way bigger than us, I would say maybe if you get to 300, 400, 500 members as a minimum, you can start to give some times off. I will say for us, what we do that's a rhythm is our people are very involved, like mentally every week, but physically we are at a space where we're at one service right now that our goal is once a month is all they serve. So they serve once, they're in service 3. And when we go to 2, and I know it probably feels like, well, man, when you go to 2, you should have more volunteers and do it differently. But we have 2 services, so we have to run all these ministries. Our band doesn't do this, by the way. Our band, if you're on for a week, you play all the services. Children's ministry, cafe, things like that, door holders, information desk, all those things. Those people serve once and they're off 3 because we want them to be able to sit by their friends in service that they're investing in and inviting and sitting and being a part of. But when we go back to 2 services, we do twice a month. So you're on 2, you're off 2, but the 2 weeks you're on, we encourage you to attend 1, serve 1. And so we understand that space, and so we're trying to encourage and trying to sit in a little more in that. I've also found though too, man, if you give somebody 3 months off, they're out, they're done, they just aren't coming back.
They're going to realize we really enjoyed this.
Yeah. It's COVID. I mean, it's exactly what happened with COVID. Gave us all 3, 6, 9 months off. And then people are still struggling. Now, the people who've come back to church are crazy involved. I just think it's a different culture. And I think something that's interesting too is, and I'm not saying, I mean, this isn't like, oh, Bruce is old, but Bruce is a couple years older than I am. And his generation functioned very differently in the church than my generation does. And definitely different than the generation behind me. And I think that when he says, hey, I can do this, and I can step in and we can take a couple months off and kind of lean into this space, it's in that moment that I'm going, man, I just don't know that my generation would come back. We've gotten too busy with travel sports with our kids. We've gotten too busy with trying to help our kids be successful or trying to get through or figure out how to get a job or get into college or do all these things. And if I get 3 months off, Tony, it's like you just said, I'm going to be like, I've got this freedom. So now I'm going to kind of step in and just do that.
So, unfortunately, I think that we've lost Bruce, so he couldn't come back with a rebuttal to what you said. But I will kind of.
And it definitely wasn't. I mean, and that's the thing I told Bruce, and we kind of talked, on the phone in the intermediary of losing him. It's definitely not a pushback. I just think it's a cultural change.
And I think it's a critical mass, right? And so if you're a church of I would even say 250 people, you have more of a volunteer pool to pull from to where you have that luxury, and it's a luxury to be able to say to your volunteers, hey, we're giving you the summer off. We're giving you this season off. We're going to work in quarters, and you get this quarter off. And you have enough people that are coming through your pipeline. You have enough in that pool of volunteers that you can have them up on a schedule to where every group of volunteers gets a quarter off. That's wonderful, and love that idea if you can do that. I think the reality for most of our listeners in most churches that are 150 and under, you don't have that big of a pool of volunteers to pull from. You're trying just to scrape by to find enough volunteers, like we talked about last week, to beg, borrow, and steal enough volunteers to just run your programming on a week-to-week basis. You're living week to week. And so the thought of saying to someone, we're going to give you 3 months off, it's not an option for you. And then you do run the risk, as you were saying, that if you give them that time off, they may not ever come back.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast this week with Ed Stetzer and a pastor from Liverpool, Steve Robinson, and it's great. It's under the churchleaders.com umbrella, and it's Ed's weekly podcast. And it was about training and retaining volunteer, creating a culture of volunteering. And one of the things that Steve said in that was volunteering isn't serving. He said, my mom said I'm a good singer, so I should be on the worship team. That's like you wanting to do what you've been told you're good at. And there's such a difference in volunteering and just, or no, sorry, he said volunteering and serving isn't, my mom said I'm good. Sorry, I read my notes wrong. That's why I have glasses and I should wear them more. I'm a good singer, so I should be on the worship team. He said the real engagement is, what are your gifts? Because, my mom tells me I'm great at a lot of things, and I'm old enough and aware enough now to know that she's wrong. And I appreciate her heart and her love for me. But when I'm 20, and mama says I'm a good singer, why do I not have the solo for the choir? Why do I not have the guitar and the mic for the front? And so volunteering and serving is just stepping into this space of a genuine heart. And I think that's part of this when we talk about how do you train and equip volunteers. I believe that's part of it, is helping them understand what are their gifts, what are their abilities, what are their talents.
And passions.
Yeah.
I love that, Robert. One of the things that is a critical component of everything that I do, all of my coaching, all of my consulting, is the Clifton Strengths Finder program. done by the Gallup organization. And several years ago, I mean, probably 10, 15 years ago now, I went through certification to be a Gallup strengths coach. And to do that, went to Charlotte and spent a week with their team getting certified and trained in how to lead people through their StrengthsFinder program. And it was put on at St. Matthew's Catholic Church in Charlotte, North Carolina, which I had no idea, not being Catholic, and I don't follow much of the Catholic scene.
Yeah, me either.
It's the largest Catholic church in the United States.
Oh.
I would have thought New York City, Boston, something like that. Charlotte, North Carolina has the largest Catholic church in the United States, something like 8,000 regular attenders.
I definitely would have thought Northeast. Yeah.
And so we spent the whole week there, but then on Sunday we got to go to a service there. It was one of the coolest things that I've ever seen, not from what they did in their service standpoint, but from the way that they ran their volunteers and how ingrained the StrengthsFinder program is into the culture of their church. And the reason why they were so excited to be hosting all these people from all over the world coming to get trained and certified in this program. That when you walked into the lobby of this massive, massive church, I mean, the place is huge. Their footprint in Charlotte it's as large as any church campus you've ever been to. I mean, you can look Saddleback, Willow Creek, whatever you want, North Point in Atlanta. It's as large as any of those. And you walk into their main atrium and they have, think old school 1980s walk name tag board when you walk into a church, except this one takes up a 25-yard section of their thing that is just filled with thousands and thousands of lanyards with like name holders on the bottom of it. And they're all alphabetical, and all of their volunteers have one of these that gives their name and then their 5 signature themes. Within the StrengthsFinder program, they've got 32 themes that the developers, Don Clifton and Marcus Buckingham and some other guys that were part of putting this together, identified 32 themes of strength, of talent that people have. And so what the program does, the assessment does, is identifies your top 5. And then let's focus on how do we work your life around these 5 main areas of strength that you have. And so what St. Matthew's does is every person who signs up to volunteer, before they even put them in what ministry they're going to be a part of, they're going to be volunteering in, they have them take the StrengthsFinder assessment. They identify their 5 signature themes. They talk them through what those mean to them, where it lines up with their passions and abilities. And then they put them into areas of service based on their strengths. And everyone who's in service in this church has that readily identifiable. They have a name tag, a lanyard that has their 5 signature strengths, their 5 signature themes on there. And it's just a part of the culture. It's a part of what they're doing. So everyone in this mega church that is in a volunteer role knows exactly who they are, knows exactly what their gifts are, what their strengths are, what their passions are, and they're serving in the area of their strengths. And in talking with them about their retention, their volunteer retention, it was unfathomable, because they were putting the time and the energy and the resources into making sure that people were serving in the areas that were going to bring them strength and joy, happiness and energy, and not the areas where like, man, I really need a 3-month break. I can't wait for my off week because I don't want to be doing this. And it was pretty remarkable to see that happen. And something that seems very difficult to do on such a large scale, but very scalable to a smaller congregation.
Yeah, and I mean, that would be so, I mean, it feels very intense, but that would be so helpful to, even if you didn't have the lanyards and stuff like that, even if it was just a Minority Report type board hanging in your office that you had, that you could see, that you're able to pray over and lead through. And I just, thinking through that and some of the stuff I've listened to, like, I mean, everybody's got gifts and abilities. And I think a lot of times people feel like they're serving other places, maybe outside the church, their job, their neighborhood. But like, if you're a part of a family, I feel like you don't get to go. So like, I'm a part of my family. I have a wife, 3 kids, a dog. I don't get to go and just hang out at somebody else's house and invest in their family and hang out with my friend and their family and all this stuff, and then show up and just expect my family to be healthy and doing well. Like, we've got to be building our house and we've got to be stepping in. And so leaders need to be developing and training volunteers in that way, like you're talking about, understanding what their giftings are, seeing that. And if somebody's like, oh, I can't afford to do the Finder, or I can't afford to do the Enneagram, or I can't afford to do whatever to learn that about people, which there's free versions of most of those things if you go to Google. It's better with a licensed person, and you would definitely agree with that. And that's not from you teach this and get paid to do it. You would just say, like, hey, I've done a lot of these. All of them can have some benefit. You found the most benefit from the Clifton and what you've done inside of that Strengths Finder. And we've talked about that, and I definitely see where that is. But I just think that people are kind of so busy, like, you got to like doing and sitting and going. Ed Stetzer said this. He said, we've built churches like theaters, and we're surprised when people show up and take the entertainment and don't do the serving. And I think that's the problem, is people are showing up. They have gifts, talents, and abilities. As leaders, we're not having conversations with people. We're not
most
listening.
people don't even pick up their own trash when they leave the movie theater.
Yeah. And so we're surprised people aren't serving. And if you're listening to this and you can find a way to say kind of what I'm about to say right here, please message in and let us know, because I would love to be able to say this and not get fired. But people have to be building up their own house and then going out as a family to build up, serve, and encourage other families in the community, not going other places and giving away everything they've got and showing up and saying, where's my show? And there's a tension there that I think that a lot of churches are facing.
But we've created that.
Oh, absolutely.
I think the church has created that.
Absolutely. I was hoping you had more, because I've got nothing. All I can say is yes and yes again.
Yeah, I think that if you go back to what is the church, what's the purpose of the church? The purpose of the church, going back to the tabernacle, right? The whole purpose of the church was for people to come and give their offering. That's what it was there for. It was not for us to come and receive. It was for us to come and give. And instead, we've turned it into, what am I going to get out of this? And so when we show up for church, it's our expectation is, what am I going to get out of this? Not what I can give to this. What can I provide God through my gifts, my talents, my abilities, but rather, what are the people here? What show are they going to put on that I'm going to receive something from? And when we go to Cracker Barrel after church, the conversations in the car on the way or sitting down around your fried chicken is, what'd you think of the sermon today? What'd you think of the worship today? What'd you think of the music today? What'd you get out of children's ministry today? What'd you get out of student ministries? What did you get out of this? What did you get out? Not what did I give to it, but what did I receive from it? And it's a complete switch from what the church was originally intended to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a slow grind. I believe there's I know there's some shifts in my heart and some things that I'm working and leading towards. And I've got some friends that I feel like are doing those same things, but it's, the culture of everybody consumes so much so fast, and it's, how do you fit my need? How do you fill my need? And I just think that it's something we're going to have to kind of change, because like your thing, like what you said, something that, like I said, something I heard this week. I tried to listen to and read a bunch of stuff when we moved into a 2-part episode and kind of finished one part, and then we actually took a week off and recorded the second part. I tried to step back into some things. It's like, like our responsibility in serving is being missional. It's not just serving goldfish, playing musical notes, and teaching a sermon or a Bible study. I mean, we've got to be missional in the fact of giving. I mean, the art of being generous with our time and our talents. I know everybody wants to throw treasures in there, and we should be generous financially. I think it's a biblical thing, but I'm just saying, like, the time and the talents we have, we should be generous with that. And there are a lot of people who are being generous, the question kind of comes back to how generous should people be at the church building. And I just look at it. We try. I mean, we're shifting some language. We do it slowly. We call it a house a lot. I mean, we talk about the house and the family, and we live inside of that space. And as a house and as a family, we've got to be coming alongside, supporting and encouraging each other, and that requires giving. I mean, today was a crazy day, and my wife had to take her mom to an orthopedic appointment from a surgery she had almost a year ago. Last night, my son took himself out of a baseball game. I had some probably not so fatherly kind words to say, like, "Are you injured? Are you hurt?" Remember the Titans. Turns out he was injured and not just hurt. And so he comes out of the orthopedics. My wife's been at the orthopedic all morning for hours, getting her very senior elder mom and our 15-year-old son both through their appointments and getting stuff done. And that's a family. It requires sacrifice. It requires giving, and it's not always easy. And that's something we've got to shift the thinking, but that's going to come through our teaching and stuff. And so I guess
it's so tough because I really believe, we've talked about this before, both on the mic and off the mic, that I really truly believe that training is critical. That so often churches are so thankful just to get someone in a place of serving, of volunteering, that they don't equip them to do a good job with it. I really don't even know that they care that much about them doing a good job. If we're honest, they're just thankful that they're there, that they're willing,
warm body,
that they're a warm body that's able to do that. And so I think so many churches greatly lack in the training and equipping of their volunteers. Many churches training volunteers isn't even a component. And so I really believe in that. But we talked so much last week about the time aspect of things, what people are willing to give of themselves, of their time, to an organization outside of what is absolutely required of them, right? And you could even say things that are required of them. Parenting has taken a back seat to what it used to be in our culture and our society today, and we could go on a long rabbit trail down that. But to say, okay, yes, I'm going to volunteer. You've got me on the hook. I've signed the paper. I'm doing this maybe out of a abundance of gratitude and willingness and thankfulness and desire to do this, or maybe just because I feel bad for the church and you guys have twisted my arm enough and I've seen the need. And even though it's not something that I'm excited about, I see the need and I want to fill a need. And so out of a servant's heart, I'm going to do this. Either way, we've got them to sign their names, to commit to do something. And now you're telling me that you want me to come on a Saturday morning to do a 3-hour training on how to properly hold open the door and greet people, or how to work in children's ministry or lead a small group or something like that. People just don't want to do it. They just simply don't want to do it. And so how do we adequately train and equip our volunteers without monopolizing their time, without taking away from other things that they want to do, to make it something that they're not only willing to do, but excited about doing, and feel that the church is giving back to them for all that they're giving to us?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts there. One, I was listening to something this week, and it might have been Ed and Steve talking through, and he talked about, and Steve was talking about how that he said, we had this guy in our church, unbelievable leader, and we needed somebody to oversee and lead our worship team. And he's like, God cannot play music at all, but he knows how to build up, equip, train, and lead people well, love them well, on mission, discipling them as it goes. And I think sometimes we've got to think outside of the box. What does it look like to put the right people in the right position, even though it isn't what would be normal or be considered normal by everyone else? So I think there's a starting place that's there that we have to get into and kind of go with. I was having some conversations just yesterday around some things, and somebody just really needs a lot of my time. And I told this person, I was like, look, I have a ton, I'm willing to, and my family, we have a ton of time that we can and will give. And that sounds, people are like, wow, it must be great to be you. But I give that time at 5 a.m. Like, I'll meet you at 6 a.m. for a breakfast. I mean, I've got things to do. I've got 20 minutes for a coffee. I've got an hour here. I'll meet you late at night. I used to meet people at Perkins at 11 o'clock at night. I'll go sit at Waffle House with you at midnight. If that's the window that I can meet with you, and I've still got to get up at 5 a.m. So I'm willing to do those things. It's hard, though, if somebody said, I need you to give me 3 hours on Saturday morning to come to learn how to hold a door. And I'm going, that's the one day my kid's playing baseball, and I love you, but I'm arrogantly going to say I know how to hold a door. And
I think that's the problem, though.
Yeah,
Robert,
no, I'm with you, and it is a problem.
You
Yeah.
and I, we
probably could.
Someone could call us right now and say, "Hey, I'm in a bind. I need you to come lead a group this afternoon," and we could go wing our way through it.
Somebody would call us right now. We'd shut off the podcast and go fix it. Yeah,
But we've done this for 20 years. That we know how to do this. If there was a bind and we needed to go in and teach a children's Sunday school class, children's ministry thing, we could do that with 5 minutes notice. Hand me the thing. You don't even need to hand me the thing. I could go and pull something off of the top of my head and make it fine for what it is. Because we've done that. We've been trained in that. We've been educated in that. We've got decades of experience in doing this. Most people who have been working at a factory for the last 15, 20 years, or teaching in a elementary school for the last 50, or working as an accountant for the last 25 years, and now they've been said, we've got them to agree to lead a small group, or to teach a children's Sunday school class, or be a greeter.
Yeah.
Okay? They've never done anything like that, and they're terrified. They don't know what to do. And so they want to know that we value their effort, their willingness so much that we're going to invest into them without requiring much more of a sacrifice of them. Several months ago, you and I were talking about this, and I think this was off mic. It might have even been at
possibly.
One of the times
We talk a lot.
having coffee or something, and we're talking about how do you train your volunteers, and you told me we really don't do much. I think you even said we have some videos or something like that.
There's some videos and things we send out.
People, and I walked away from that thinking, that's horrible.
Well, but in fairness, too, what I was going to say is that we have people show up and like they work alongside somebody. And so that's the thing for me is like, I don't know that people have 3 hours to give you on a Saturday a lot of times. And yes,
that's the way it used to be.
No,
that's the way
it.
things used to work. Is we would do. I mean, I led small group ministry trainings for years and years, and had a binder that I would give people, and it was like a 6-hour training that we did before anyone could lead a small group. It was great. By the time you were done with it, you were really well equipped to lead your small group and deal with any of the situations that might come your way in a small group. We did role playing. We did all kinds of great. It was great. I don't know that works anymore. I don't know that works nowadays.
And I'll tell you a tension that I'm seeing, and I'll just tell you this from my personal stuff, is like I love my small group leaders, but what happens, a few episodes ago, we did the conversation around some topics inside of society and culture, and how do you address those from through your sermon or through conversation and things like that. And the tension comes down to is I almost feel like now I have to spend 14 hours sitting with every person who's going to lead a small group to go, what are your thoughts on the environment? What are your thoughts on gender identity, sexuality? What are your thoughts on gun control or whatever it is? And you sit in that space and you go, man, because the conversation I'm having with people is if Sunday morning is the dip your toe in, and to get people asking questions, where is the space that we take a further step in biblical literacy? And everybody always says, well, that's small groups. And I always raise my hand and go, then how are we equipping and training those people to be prepared for that? Because, guys, what you just asked them to do is 100 times harder than what we do on Sunday mornings. Because most of us as good communicators, if we wanted to, could spend an hour, a little bit of Google, a little bit of prayer, a little bit of writing, and we could write a 20-minute sermon and stand up and talk, and people go, man, he's good. Not great, but good. Not Adrian Rogers, but he can get a job done. And we're asking somebody to be able to do a deep theological dissertation through the book of Romans or through the topic of gender identity and sexuality So I agree with you 100%, by the way. I think that things got so seeker sensitive focused that it was more about getting people through the doors than it was equipping people for the journey. And I could be totally wrong. And if you're a seeker sensitive church, I'm not send the email to me. That's fine. Tony can give you my email. But I'm just trying to navigate that. And so the training and equipping is so huge. We've got to sit with people. I think for us, and I think it's my bad South verbiage. What we're doing that I'm seeing work well is the leader of each area is the one who is typically taking on their week. The new volunteer is sitting with them for 2 or 3 weeks, and they're getting trained in how do we do this.
I love that. I really love that. And I think that that's probably more practical than the way that I used to do things. I really do. I think
it depends on the job. Sorry. I think it depends on the job. That's all. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit. What are some essential qualities or skills, maybe requirements that volunteers need to have?
We're looking for more than a pulse, and man, I think here's the thing that's hard. I believe there is this draw inside of us to serve other people. I actually think when people are so selfish and don't serve, they are going against what we were created to do, and it is actually a lot more work and a lot harder on them. When somebody says, my life is about me and not about others, it is so much more complicated. So in that, I've got 2 things to say. One, I think our desire, our natural desire is to serve, but it's terrifying. Secondly, if you are a believer, if someone has a relationship with Jesus, it is not optional to serve. Like, we have to be serving the body. We have to be serving the community, serving our families. Serving is what we are, who we are, what we should be doing. And I mean, Philippians and so many other things we could go into and reinforce that. But I think that in that space, just the initial statement should be, if someone's a follower of Christ, serving is the expectation.
It's a mandate.
And so then it starts to come, and this is where the training and kind of being aware, like having conversations. I think spiritual gifts tests are great. It's a great starting place. I think the Strengths Finder you're talking about is another. Those types of things are really good steps. There's got to be something, and it takes some time. It takes some pen to paper, or clicking on a screen or something to answer. I had to do an Enneagram thing the other day. 180 questions. I don't like asking 180 questions, much less answering them, especially as vague as all those types of things are. And I just kind of go, man, I don't. How do you ask good questions though, and help people move through these things to where they can start to understand what their gifts are? And then I think once they understand, we do have a responsibility to be equipped and capable of assisting them and connecting them to the right place and the right people. There's people who are really good teachers that are terrible children's ministry people.
Sure.
But they're unbelievable with 22 to 28-year-old young married couples.
Yeah.
And so we have a responsibility and a gifting to be able to do that.
And I think that when we take the time, as difficult as it is, when we take the time to invest into them, instead of just saying, hey, here you go. Great. Here's where you need to be. When you need to be there, go. We'll figure it out. Mm-hmm. When we take that time, even though they might not want to do it on the front end because it is going to be a commitment, is going to require some sacrifice. We don't want to do it because we just want to get them into action, and we don't want to take them through any kind of training or orientation because that's taking time away from what needs to be done. When we do that, we make that investment. I think what that shows the volunteer is that we genuinely care about you. We care about you and about this role. And it's more than just, we need a warm body to fill an empty space. It is, no, we really care about you. We care about this role that you're filling, and we want to make sure that you're fully equipped to do this. And I don't have statistics to back this up, but I would say that the longevity is going to be greater when someone is trained and equipped as opposed to just thrown into the fire.
Yeah, and I mean, it's so hard to remind people to, because when you whether you're thrown in or whether you're not, sometimes like people feel like that they're helping me out, they're serving me, or they're serving the church, or they're serving a ministry. But that reminder, and you said this a second ago, and it just sparked this thought. I mean, we're serving Jesus. Like, we're serving the Father, and our job, our responsibility, our calling has to be from that heart and that attitude, not the other, and not just this, oh man, well, I'm here to help Robert out today. He said he needed somebody to help with 4-year-olds, so here I am. And when it's a begrudging type of thing, that shows through, and we don't get to lead people. It has to be missional. It has to be leading people towards Jesus. It has to be on purpose, and I mean that in the double entendre way. I mean, it has to be that real atmosphere that they're not just serving me. They're not just serving the church. They're not just serving the ministry. They're not helping somebody out. That they are really using the gifts that God gave them to serve the Father and to make a difference in the lives of people who are showing up.
Yeah, and I think that's critical. I've seen so many times, had this happen not too long ago, where I walked into a church to be a guest speaker, and there was a guy sitting there that was my point of contact that I was supposed to get connected with, get my microphone, all that kind of stuff, and he was running around crazy. He was unnerved because he had someone just hand him the curriculum for an adult Sunday school class that he needed to be teaching, and he didn't know, but the person was sick, and he was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. He said, so I'm going to pass you off to this person who's going to get you taken care of, and I'm going to go sit down in the back and try to quickly figure this out before I have to teach in 15 minutes. And he was frustrated. He was flustered. He was discouraged. He was not in any way excited about getting to go and be a part of what he was doing. He was annoyed about what he was having to do. Whereas if he had been equipped, if he had been properly prepared and had time to prepare, I think that it would have been a completely different mindset, completely changed attitude. And so I think that with the technology that we have now, I don't think that we have to ask our people to come to a 3-hour Saturday morning training session. Going back to what you said to me a while ago about how you guys have videos, there's so much available online right now that I don't think it's out of the question. I don't think it's unreasonable to say when someone says, hey, I want to volunteer, here's what I want to do, that we say, hey, we want to make sure that we get you plugged into the right place, serving in the areas of your strengths and things that you're excited about, that we can get behind you, not you behind us, like we talked about last week, and saying, so we're going to send you a couple things that you can do on your own time. You can do at home, a couple quick videos we'd love for you to watch. And we just want to prepare you and equip you and be behind you to make you the most successful that you can be in this role. I would think that person is going to step into their first time of serving feeling much more prepared and much more excited about what they're doing, as opposed to just walking in and saying, what am I supposed to do now?
Well, we did, that's so good and so true. And we did a kind of a volunteer, retaining first-time guests a while back, and there was a book that I had read called The Comeback Effect that was a little bit of the spur and the catalyst for that conversation. And in that space, I told you then, and I've started writing these scripts, and it's really short. It's 60 to 90 seconds. And again, there's some of you all that if you ever see these videos that I'm doing, you're going to be like, I could do better than that. And you probably can. And there's some of you all that are an absolute nervous wreck. You're like, if I had to put together 60, 90 seconds, flip my iPad up on the side and talk into it for a couple of minutes. But I've started writing these short little scripts. I would read, I'd highlight something. There's a section that would mean a lot to me. It was 10 chapters, and I'm like, I'm going to take 5 things per chapter. And so I get a year's worth of content, and I've got these videos, these little short videos that I'm recording, and I'm going to send them out starting here this month. It's May now. Send them out to my leaders and they just to the people who are volunteering, just the volunteers, just the people who are serving. And it's these little encouragements of, hey, remember, here's things we're facing. Here's something I went through this week. Here's something I know that's going on. And over time, as I write the scripts, I'll get some other staff members to record these. I'll get my deacons or lead team to step in. And it's these 6 short 60 to 90 second videos that we can just text out to somebody and they can pop it up and go, what you're doing matters. And I just want you to remember why, because here's a story we heard this week from someone. Here's the thing. I mean, the first one I recorded, I was getting on the interstate and I was so irritated because somebody wouldn't move over and let me in. Nobody else on the interstate. It was me in that car, not another car within 10 miles. And they wouldn't move over and let me get into that space. And then, like, it literally hit me as I got around and I got on, and the person wasn't driving that fast, and I just moved around them and went on. And when I got on the interstate, I just thought, I wonder what's really going on in their life. Like, did they just have a fight with their spouse? Did they get some really rough news about their kid's health this week? Are they heading to work and maybe they've got a really hard meeting they're ready to sit into? Maybe they're on the verge of losing their job. And so many times I'm so worried about getting myself from point A to point B at the speed, pace, and rate that I need to. I forget that other people actually have the troubles in this world. And I have to remember that, we get to take heart because Christ overcame the world, that we are supposed to be a representation of Christ. And so those are kind of stories that sometimes it's just, hey, I had a bad week. I acted like a fool. But in that space, when I have those conversations, people go, oh yeah, I forget about that. And it inspires people to want to join in and be a part.
I think that's a great transition into the next section that I wanted to talk about. We've talked about how to recruit volunteers. We've talked to how to train volunteers. But now let's talk about, you've got them in, they're serving. How do you keep them serving? How do you retain volunteers? Because I think what happens a lot of times is we put all of our energy into getting them started, and then once they're started, once they're going, then we kind of forget about them. And we think that they're just going to continue serving forever in their role. I love what you talked about. I think that a couple of things that are really critical to that is celebrating small wins. We've talked about that so many times before, to publicly, corporately celebrate the things, publicly, corporately acknowledge your volunteers. I love when churches do, volunteer of the week, and that's something that you're putting on your screen, you're celebrating, you're maybe even bringing them up and giving them a gift card or something, that you're acknowledging them in front of other people, because so many of our volunteers are behind the scenes. Nobody sees them. Nobody really even knows what they're doing and knows what a critical role that they're playing in the overarching ministry of the church, the overall mission of the church. And so to publicly acknowledge them and thank them for what they're doing, appreciate them for what they're doing, I think goes a long ways to help them to see what I do does matter. I am noticed here. Another thing that I think is critically important is the FaceTime. I think that videos are great, emails are great, but I know that for me, after a while, those just get tossed away. They still mean something. I appreciate it, but you're sending that out to 50 people, to 100 people, to 200 people. The 5 a.m. coffee meeting, the 11 o'clock Waffle House, the face-to-face thank you. Just wanted to take you to coffee to say thank you. Just wanted to take you to lunch to just say how much we appreciate all that you're doing. And I read a statistic, I don't remember exactly what the number was, but that one 30-minute face-to-face buys you, and this is going to sound incredibly shallow, but one 30-minute face-to-face with someone buys you 8 to 10 months of
basically relational equity
with them.
And I hate to, and you and I both, like, these are book terms that at our age we were reading books and leadership things where people talk about relational equity, and I definitely don't look at relationships as transactional, but there is a level of that is true, and we we build relationships with people in spaces, because there are people, and this sounds terrible, there are people that I probably wouldn't have lunch and coffee with if they weren't serving and apart, because we would never be in the same circle. It's because of that we get a chance to sit and be in that space. I mean, the last time I had a 11:30 Perkins, piece of pie and coffee was with a guy that I was getting ready to perform their wedding, his fiance's wedding, and we just needed to talk, and there was some things we needed to work through, and he was busy and I was busy, and 11:30 at Perkins eating some pie and cake and drinking coffee was where we had time to do it. And so it's in that space though, but he and I had a relationship, and I was going to give him that time, whether it was midnight or 2 a.m. or noon. It didn't matter how that goes. So no, that's such a good statement there. And that's a real good encouragement and reminder for me as well.
And there's no excuse not to. I think that it doesn't matter how large of a church you have. You can time block your schedule to say it can only be, maybe it's once a week. Once a week you have a 30-minute spot in your time block where it's volunteer appreciation, and it's so you've got 52 weeks out of, let's say you're gone on vacation for 3 weeks. So you've got 49 volunteers that if you just meet with them for 30 minutes, take them to coffee down the street from the church for 30 minutes, once a year, you're getting that, again, not to sound shallow, that relational equity with them. They see that you care, you value them, you see them, you acknowledge them, you appreciate what they're doing. And it's also a time for you to sit down and say, is there anything I can do for you? Is there anything that you don't feel adequately equipped to be doing in your role? Anything else that you'd love to be doing? That's not the agenda of this. The agenda is just to say thanks, just appreciate you. But if you can't find 30 minutes in your week, once a week, to do that, then you need to reprioritize what you're doing.
Yeah, and then I think we can remember as well, like Jesus's model, and Jesus did this. Now he met with one that moved to 3, that went to 12. And after those 12, I think there was some Mary Magdalens and some people who
absolutely there was.
probably a group of 20, maybe 25 people that he lived pretty intimately with.
Yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say that by year 2, the Jesus caravan was in the hundreds. There were hundreds, thousands of people that followed him. I don't know
how much Jesus sat outside of those 12 to 20-ish. I mean, how you doing? High five. Hey, I saw your
But
kid.
yet we see almost every other chapter in the Gospels, he's pulling someone away from the crowd to get alone with them.
And having conversations. And so I will say, though, the vast majority of the time in that, it's hospital for the sick, not a mausoleum or a museum for the saints. So I think, though, that we can take and we can use that same structure a little bit. If you've got someone who leads your children's ministry, your student ministry, your worship team, your tech team, your coffee team, your small groups, if you've got 8, 10, 12 people that are leading these ministries, you can do coffee twice a year with them, and then set that model and transition for them. And say, hey, it would be, if you feel like there's a nervousness or something financially, maybe they can't afford to do a coffee or something, like find some other ways. I mean, one of the best conversations I've had in a long time was in my backyard a Sunday or 2 ago, just playing ladder ball and standing with a guy. Everyone else had left. It was just me and him, and we just played ladder ball, and he started asking some really intense questions, and I gave some pretty intense answers, and we just started working through some stuff. But that same thing can happen relationally of, hey, how's life? Thanks for what you do. What's going on? And you're just throwing cornhole bags or playing ladder ball or, just whatever. There's ways to do this that if money's an issue, you don't have to be. I'm like you. I love coffee. There's something very New Testament-y. Well, actually, there's something very biblical about being around the table, and I just love that. So whether it's a table in a coffee shop or at my house, that is my favorite place to be, over a meal, over a drink, over something along those lines. But no, I agree 100%.
I love it. We're about out of time, my friend.
Woohoo! Man, I love this topic. And I know you say these things a lot, and so I'll say this today, and this definitely isn't scripted, so you have no clue what I'm about to say. Man, we are here. If you're listening to this, we are here for you. I mean, this is what we want to do. And there are moments you hear us get really passionate about this, and we talk because we are passionate and we care greatly about seeing the church make a difference. And so if you're listening to this and you're going, man, I really need some help, I just don't know what next step to take, please reach out. I know Tony puts all our information in the show notes so that you can connect with us through social media or whatever. I mean, Lola, the show dog, is even wanting to help out. She is echoing this statement so big. So I just want you to hear that you're not alone. As Tony's looking at me right now, and he knows where I'm at. We have a lot of private conversations. If you're struggling with recruiting and training and equipping, I'm in a season of that myself, and I'm facing a really hard time. And it is through connections with other pastors, other friends, that I'm able to do that. And if you don't have that support, let us be here for you and help you navigate those things.
And that's one of the main resources that Higher Ministries offers, is that we would love to come in and help you either set up a volunteer training and retention program or do it for you. And we don't charge for any of that. So
love it. So good.
Give us
love what we do.
We'd love to do that. All right, my friend. Well, that is about all the time that we've got for today. We do want to thank you for listening to this edition of the Small Church Podcast. As Robert just said, if you have any questions, would like to reach out to us for help on any of the things that we've talked about, we would love to connect with you. You can connect with us online at higherministries.com or find us on Facebook at higherministries.com. I do want to thank Robert for his insight today. He gave some great insights and thoughts and knowledge. And as always, we're here for you, and we want to continue this conversation. We're sorry for the technical issues that came with Bruce not being able to continue on, but we hope that you'll tune in next week, where hopefully we will be joined by Bruce Montgomery. Want to send out a reminder to like the Small Church Podcast, subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and share us. Your shares help other people to find us and hopefully get the valuable information that we're trying to dispense. Hope that you have a great week. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll tune in next week for another edition of the Small Church Podcast.